Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of our conference, and we have a really good topic for you. It is adopting artificial intelligence solutions in a government agency. And I'd like to just give some background on what we're going to talk about. AI is transforming government regulatory agencies by enhancing efficiency, accuracy, and decision-making processes, but also comes with a unique set of risks. This session will explore how a public service agency navigated these factors when implementing AI tools. By the end of the session, we hope that you will understand the benefits and challenges of integrating AI into regulatory frameworks and both best practices and resource agencies could use when leveraging AI tools for improved public service delivery. And we have for you a really good speaker, a co-worker of mine, Dr. Richard Wagwich, Doctor of Business Administration, LSS MBB. Dr. Richard Wagwich brings over 20 years of expertise in implementing IT initiatives and leading projects in both private and public sectors. With a Master's of Science in System Technology, a doctorate in IT Management, and a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt certification, Rich has driven significant advancements in healthcare technology. Since joining the County of Monterey in 2018, he has spearheaded updates to the electronic health record system, ensuring compliance with federal and state regulations. Now serving as the IT manager and information security officer, Rich actively participates in Government AI Coalition, the County of Monterey AI Working Group, and chairs the Health Department AI Governance Board, leading efforts to integrate AI in public health for enhanced regulatory compliance and service delivery. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wagwich.
Hi everybody. Thanks for the invite to come and speak today, Jeff and Rick. Thank you to the CCDEH for the wonderful conference. I hope everyone has been having a great time so far this week. Just wanted to get maybe a show of hands, just see you level set a little bit here in the agency right now here in the room. Now I know that maybe we're all at different levels, maybe in our counties of where we are at with AI, and maybe just a show of hands, maybe for those who might say, hey, you know what, our organization isn't really using AI. Anyone feel like they're in that panel? Cool. How about those who are probably maybe they're looking at pending AI, they're kind of considering that? And then finally, how many of us here feel like, you know what, this AI thing is really cool, we've done a lot of implementations, we've got several AI things out there right now in the, awesome. So just a level set here, expectation. We're kind of in the, we're in the process right now of in that second level, right? We just started trying to get the frameworks together, slowly trying to figure out how we can best use it here in our agency, in that second group. So, I realize being the last speaker, just want to let you know what's standing right now between his presentation and dinner. So we'll get into what exactly is this artificial intelligence trend that's impacting the organizations, of course the benefits and the risk of AI. Talk about our experience and what we've been going through to try to look at how we're navigating these AI waters. Come up with some of the lessons learned that we came out of that, this experience. Provide you guys some resources that I've been able to find successful, that we've been able to adopt artificial intelligence, and finally, just open the floor out to everyone out here. Now, I think one real thing out there is if you guys have Microsoft or Google as your thing, you're probably already using AI in your organization. Microsoft has this really cool thing they just implemented back in 2021, I think is when it came out. Viva Insights runs on AI, kind of having your own, like, you know, having Clippy be your personal secretary. Like really great about it. Can tell you, hey, what email you have, who haven't you talked to yet. Hey, I see you got your Fab Five out there that are emailing you. Do you want me to give you notifications when they come in? That's kind of the, hey, we noticed that you're actually working too much and you're sending emails after 5 o'clock. Do you guys think you might want to add some breaks in there, It is good for that kind of tool. Google Maps. Really great integrating. Now we're using artificial intelligence, trying to make it more streamlined, trying to give more real-world updates, real time, and trying to streamline here the, pulling in all of these new remote data sources from a wide range of sources. Of course, my personal favorites, search engines. They have the new capabilities here, Copilot, for example, in Microsoft. Google has their own agencies. So search engines today are leveraging AI to try to make your experience much more better. And even though the last one on the bottom there isn't really AI, I thought, there's probably potential there for Google. And finally, Microsoft is introducing Copilot. It's already out in the private sector, coming soon to the government cloud on October 15th. New AI that can actually help provide a little bit more streamlining of in Excel, and Word, try to help streamline, do a more robust grammar / spell checker. Also used in Outlook emails, can help you draft responses. Also can help you give you a summary, similar to what you can get from some of the new robust Zoom and Bard and a couple of these other challenges are coming into. They want to leave out the virtual market to their competition. So, what exactly is this artificial intelligence thing that is out there? Well, this is the Webster's definition of AI. In a nutshell, I like to think that there are three real key characteristics of AI, from traditional to current, traditional software to current AI. Big data, automation, and a certain degree of autonomy. Specifically, this last one here, how you tell the computer what to program. In the old days, or in old software, if you want to call it, we could tell a non-AI computer, hey, we want to do a forecast model, right? Let's say we're doing a forecast model, want to see how we can best resource. We can have our epidemiologists and maybe our computer programmers come together, go to a back room, put out and say, hey, this is what we want to include in the model, this is what we want to exclude in the model, what variables should we be looking at, and then we actually tell the computer, hey, put the model in, here's the model, go put out the updates. In a high-level AI, I just go to the computer and I say, hey computer, these are all the people that we want to exclude from the model, here's the people there that we don't want in the model, let's put them together, and then you tell us what the model is. And the computer can then dictate and then come up with a model, and then to some degree of autonomy, we have the ability to actually create and actually leverage what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And of course, what we're hearing now, generative AI. One major difference between generative AI and traditional machine learning is generative AI is a more general purpose tool. So this is your ChatGPTs. With a lot of your machine learning tools, they're only built for one specific purpose, right? I can't use Alexa to get me home, But I can use generative AI. I can sit there, do a computer program code, turn it right around again, put it into here, put it into an email, have it do a nice little research pattern, turn it right around again, and then give me a nice little, video feed of our new picture that's out there too, all through the power of using the same tool. So, what are the benefits of AI? Now, when Rick and Jeff gave me the actual invitation to speak, I immediately did what any good AI person would do, and I immediately went to ChatGPT. And as you can see, when we got to the cats actually running the organization there, I kind of thought it was probably time to do my own research. And so what exactly are the benefits of AI? The first and foremost, number one, is we can process those complex data sets, right? That we have a large amount of data, we're bringing it in. This complexity can easily come in, and actually be done. Something maybe that humans can't really process, it can do it faster. The other idea is that with that comes, of course, automation. Specifically, the stuff that is pretty routine. So if we have routine tasks or routine processes or items that are pretty, with complex data, probably good tools in here, artificial intelligence can help triage those. And ideally, if we have good data, the idea then is if we're using it to automate maybe forms, automate specific documentation, maybe to a certain extent it will reduce the error that might be caused in a manual process. The other idea here is to help use it to leverage decision making, maybe even do prevention measures. For example, CAL FIRE was actually looking at utilizing artificial intelligence to help actually figure out and hopefully looking at for the prevention of wildfires. Trying to get their early case, looking at some early cases, try to see what factors are coming in, and then hopefully they can allocate resources much more quicker. Another aspect of this too is because we're dealing with routine. Hopefully we can use it to help deal with we can maybe use AI as a customer support tool, or maybe use it as a tool that can help deal with the simpler tasks. And that way our team could then work on the more complex tasks that come out. And with that, you can also, and at the same time, hopefully in those areas and environments where it may be, a little more challenging for humans to reach, where there is a risk of a workman's comp. I know for some of the other private sector, they've used that in certain warehouses and other situations where they've actually leveraged AI to help out in the supply chain to deal with those tasks that might be a little bit more damaging to where human injury is a lot more common. Of course, unless there's a computer outage, computers are available 24/7 to provide support, which again, less cost hopefully than bringing in some humans after hours to provide that service. Also here, one of the things that we might see is that there is a challenge with getting those gaps. You can leverage AI in some capacity, maybe in those, especially for those jobs that are routine, are customary, are dangerous. You can certainly leverage AI into the capability to maybe as an augmentation for service gaps. And of course, because of all this triaging of handling the routine, the ideal is that, in theory, for organizations, you can maximize your productivity because you're not generally focusing on the simple stuff. You're actually going to focus on the more triaging, the more complex cases that are actually coming down the road. Now, that's what at least is out there in all of the academic journals on AI and all of the other tools. So what exactly did we see, talking down with Rick and I when we were looking around at, hey, how can we leverage this AI things in the county of Monterey? I think there was a couple of things. One, of course, is we were looking at the potential of using a customer support tool. One of the things we did was a proof of concept in our health department, which I'll show here a little later on. Second one that's actually being explored with is, we're looking at word lead for this one, is translation services. One of the things that we can see is that sometimes we have in Monterey County, there is a wide diverse population. Sometimes we have languages and dialects that aren't always available. We may not have language line solutions around or a current vendor that could actually accommodate those languages. By having maybe an artificial intelligence that actually has some of those languages, we might be able to augment since we don't have current staffing to actually bring those online. Hopefully, again, using it to help facilitate, maybe seeing opportunities where we can help facilitate decisions, and looking at it here to help not make the decision, but rather facilitate the decision-making process that we have up there. Also, another good thing with this is that we sometimes might have people out there that do their own processes. Clearly, having it all using a tool that can actually do this certainly can help standardize certain workflows, certain decision-making processes, and maybe certain data collection processes as part of building up that infrastructure to support the AI tools we have. One of the other complaints we get in our department is, well, man, you know what? I would love to spend more time with my patients, more time with our customers, but I got to do all this documentation. Well, now artificial intelligence can help out with that as well. They can help provide some of the automation. There are tools out there in several of the established electronic health records out there that can actually accommodate and actually bring AI into the forefront to actually help leverage and help out support some of those documentation needs. One of the other things we've been testing is also utilizing it to help out as a meeting assistant. So what this would do is we can have a meeting. It can then leverage the tool. It can actually come up with, hey, what are the discernible action items? What are the actual needs that are coming out from the conversation? What are the highlights of this conversation that we might then be able to take later and actually follow up on in conversations? And maybe just thinking about this for yourselves as you start going through this list, something maybe to dwell on and think about maybe is what are the additional benefits that you might see in your county as you start thinking about where to apply artificial intelligence. So those are all some of the benefits that are out there. So what is the danger of putting Hal in the driver's seat in some of these seats? Well, let's start with the first one here is, of course, for all of us, is maintaining regulations. Part of the challenge we all know right now is the regulatory field is still playing catch up with a lot of the artificial technology side. And that's becoming a little bit of a danger as we're starting to work, and it's also created a lot of caution on the part of that. Especially with regard to HIPAA, and especially for us, because we have our public health that's involved in that as well, 42 CFR for our SUD providers, but also all of the other environmental and health regs that we have in our department. So ensuring that compliance has become a big one. Another key danger that we're running into is, of course, following the good old model. It is still security data. We're still dealing with data. Is how do we protect, especially the patient health information that might exist, PII, other identifying information. How are we going to protect that in our artificial intelligence world? Is it still following the same safeguard practices for data security? Now, bias. A lot of times I think we can think these tools, right, are pretty objective, probably more objective than us humans when it comes to actually making decisions. The fact of the matter is, the way that we feed the bot, right, is we're taking our data and we're putting it into the artificial intelligence and we're letting the artificial intelligence do some of those decision making. A few years ago, Amazon was using artificial intelligence to help screen applicants for, as part of their HR process. What we found out later, or what was found out later, is that if you change the gender, it actually would change the result. So, in ways of saying that to this process is, we need to understand exactly what exactly is the tools are coming out. What exactly is the tool going to lead to equitable outcomes? Because it just might magnify the biases that we have implicitly. It's going to explicitly put it into the programming output. False and misleading output. I love this one. There's about last year, a lawyer used ChatGPT and filed a brief in New York. See some of the stickers out there, you kind of know where this probably went. He was fined because all of the cases that were cited in case law that he referenced in the brief never happened. So what's the moral of the story? AI, ChatGPT is a good tool for helping assist with Word documentation. It is not a good tool to be used for research. How we're leveraging the bot, how we're leveraging it, it can lead to incorrect data. It can lead to misleading numbers. Again, rectifying the biases and rectifying what we could actually result in this situation. I know this has been a major concern out there. In fact, I think there's about 3 or 4 assembly bills out going through the assembly right now on staffing and losing jobs. I think what it comes down to, the danger I see, this is just what's out there, and it kind of ties in well to some of the technology challenges that we heard from the previous presentation. I think the real danger I see isn't necessarily that we're going to lose a job to an AI. most of the positions that we're looking at that are on the firing line, well, number one, it'll probably be dependent on which kind of AI you're using and what purpose tool, because again, we've talked about how they're specific. But these are probably the jobs that are actually doing routine work, jobs that are actually following along the those routine customer service or certain other trends that might be augmented. I think the real danger, though, that I see is we're going to have to take staff that currently exist and move them into another piece of, upgrade their training, upgrading their recruitment, upgrading what's necessary to support the artificial intelligence that we're going to implement. A case in point, we might be thinking, hey, you know what? I want to have a person that does data entry. Well, right now, if we're going to be implementing artificial intelligence, a basic epidemiologist that understands basic statistics is not going to suffice if you're putting in an advanced artificial intelligence that's using advanced statistics to actually calculate artificial intelligence. We might have to look at moving someone who's a data entry person to now a data scientist to help have to integrate some of that work, which of course increase cost to actually do that same training and ultimately bringing on those positions. Again, we're also restricted, right, in terms of what a system can do, and also we're restricted in what actually the data we have. If we're going to have a customer, for example, if we have an implementation for a customer service application, right, that's public facing, but we don't have any data in the artificial intelligence for it to look at because we don't have knowledge articles, or the knowledge article is like 10 years old, and we're going to feed it. Chances are when the customer goes into the information, they're going to get, I'm sorry, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know. And then their first call is, I'm going to call it, how soon can I get to a human being to actually answer my phone call? So it totally defeats the purpose and the value of the tool. So having that data availability is in. Again, a lot of the time right now, a lot of the AI that's currently available, especially those that are off the market right now, are also pretty expensive right now. So again, keep that in mind. A lot of the figures that you can get obviously depends on the artificial, which kind of tool you're trying to implement. The other thing, of course, is this goal of having transparency. How we're going to use the output versus efficiency. A lot of efficient processes out there are also black boxes. So if you're thinking about, man, you know what, I really need that 99% modeling software solution. I don't think any of us here, right, would go to the board of supervisors in our town and be like, hey, I'm going to make this decision based because the computer actually told me so, is probably not going to be the answer, right? Having the ability to explain it in a new way and making sure we can understand where the answers are coming from is very paramount. And unfortunately, sometimes those transparent tools might also not be the most efficient tools either in terms of performance. So doing that balancing act of, as you're starting to look at AI or implementations, understanding how you want to do that balance between cost, efficiency, and transparency is going to be key and paramount in that decision-making process. So that, again, is what was in the literature. What's out there, again, talking with Rick, but as we're trying to mitigate and looking at some of the potential AI solutions out there, what are we looking at? Well, again, ensuring our compliance, making sure the tools we have are still aligned to that. And of course, our security and privacy practices, again, software, again, the quality of our data. Are we actually putting in stuff that's actually efficient? And then how are we going to use the output? Is this something that's going to be internal, or is this something that's going to be external? If it's something that's more external, clearly we probably need, obviously transparency is going to be very critical, so we can explain those decisions, bringing in, and is that something that we can sacrifice how efficient, and then how big an efficiency are we looking for, right? Is 90% really good enough? Do we need to go 99? What is the actual income of that? And is there going to be actually outcomes where we can have to bring in our equity person into the discussions, our DEI, our CRO office, to make sure that the outcomes that are going to come out are actually equitable. Or, depending on how we're using the tool, even bringing in finance, HR, of course, and our county council into those discussions as well, and our privacy officer. And then, of course, overall cost, checking into how that all balances out. And then as you just think about that and start thinking about AI, of course, this is what we've seen for our risks to AI, and maybe we can have that discussion, hopefully, to hear on what risks are we going to see in your county as you start looking at AI. So, what was it like when we first started looking into the artificial intelligence world about a year ago? Well, that probably sums it up right there. We had, first of all, of course, as we talked about, Microsoft was actually pushing out artificial intelligence. It's a really cool thing. You put it out, you actually send it out, and it sounds really great. We also had some solutions where we had tools being used where our EHR vendors would come up saying, hey, we got artificial intelligence too. Hey, come on, let's try it out, coming in. And people were like, oh yeah, this sounds cool, we can put it in. So understanding, that one was out there. We also had situations, and this is what kind of prompted some of the conversations, is we had some situations where our team would go out to another vendor, to another external partner, like for example, our behavioral health team going out to a school-based team, going out to a school, and all of a sudden they're on like Google Chrome, and they're like, hey, guess what? We got Bard recording this thing. You're now being recorded on Bard. And it's like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? How do we handle that situation? Now, under normal circumstances, I would say, well, that's easy. Turn to your policy. Let's go to the policy. Let's go look at what the procedures say. And guess what? That's right, there was no policy. So we had to then rely on, because again, when you go out and you're like, well, hey, this is artificial intelligence, it's a technology problem, so let's just rely on the technology guys to go solve the problem, right? And so we decided, we'll just use a standard security assessment that we usually do and do those things. Well, guess what? It's not, in my opinion, it wasn't sufficient, and here's why. Case in point, Zoom, anyone here is familiar with Zoom? They have so Zoom has a new tool, Artificial Intelligence Companion. Really great tool. You can use it here to figure out, if I'm not paying attention to Rick when he emails, when he calls me, I can easily, like, oh yeah, what did Rick say? And it'll actually let me know. I'm just kidding, Rick. Of course I listen to you all the time. But you can have the tools here where it can actually let you know, hey, what are the action items? What are the tools? Get a summary. I can put it out into the cloud. From a security standpoint, everything looks approvable. And our IT department said, yeah, this looks good too. Because if from a technology perspective, we manage the technology. Here's the problem. First of all, Zoom has two things. One, you can either put it in the cloud for about 24 hours, which purges it, or two, you have an actual transcript that can stay as long as we want it to stay. Now, if I'm in the middle of a negotiation, number one, do I really want to have a record that's now subject here to Public Relations Act? Number two, which also adds to this, if we do have if I'm in closed session with the board and having a confidential conversation, do you want it recorded? And if you want it, or have someone have the ability to record, that's not necessarily the function of the technology, but it is a function that is actually provided within that technology and still subject to liability and still a risk to the organization. So, after I got a new computer, keyboard, there was a couple of things we started doing here to try to get the infrastructure back to where it could be to actually get some compliance. The first thing, of course, was obviously, okay, how do we get the procedures in place? How do we get the policies in place? As I was doing a research on my own policy to see what policies are out there, I stumbled upon City of San Jose. I think if you do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, kind of these certain AI policies lead to the City of San Jose in some capacity. So when I looked at the City of San Jose, they had a site they were actually building up called the Government AI Coalition. Some of you may have heard that, or some agencies may have heard that. The Government AI Coalition is a really great partnership. It was put out, the City of San Jose was spearheading the work. They were actually pulling in the different government agencies from across the country. And what they were looking at was trying to figure out how do we have The White House, put out the federal mandates out on how do we mandate and properly use the governance of AI. I know Governor Newsom had signed a while back the AI, how are we going to leverage AI in an ethical use, and that was their mission from the GovAI Coalition, is how do we maintain this mandates of balancing this AI. And they've actually put out some great templates, both on policy. They've come up with a more robust assessment on how to look at vendor tools. They've even included, since a lot of your AI sales reps are, they sell their wares across the country, they've actually tried to do some assessments of, hey, this is what, we've already captured that data for you. So you can actually go into the vault and see who do they already look at, who has the coalition actually looked at, who have they actually, what tools have already been evaluated. So that way we don't have to do it all over again, the work has already been done. And they also built up a risk assessment plan. So again, we don't have to start from scratch. There was tools already available that are there as templates that we can actually build off of, and that way then we could look at and say, okay, is this applicable to our organization? Do we need to get some more feedback? And actually put those plans into place. Another great tool that came out that, again, was really helpful is the National Institute of Science and Technology, as part of the mandate for ethical use, put out a risk assessment framework. And one of the big things that I would highlight here, and there are whole courses developed here just on the risk framework, just on the toolkit, the activity playbook. But the real great thing about this is that it does offer the fact of looking at how to organizations across all industries, but it does give guides and activities that organizations could do to actually leverage some of the artificial intelligence that's actually really available. And again, a lot of that is specific to certain intelligence types. So, really great book. It actually encourages, which is the third point here, is generating here. What we started doing is creating some of the work groups. And I know, thank you, Rick, you kind of rattled off some of those right off here to the folks here in the room. We established some of these working groups across the country. And again, when we look at, City of San Jose's AI policies, and we have counties that have an AI policy, getting group stakeholders together in a room is basically the best way to do this. I think the danger that I've seen when you get AI, and a lot of dangers out there for organizations, is when it comes to actually leveraging AI, we look at it and say, okay, this is definitely a technology problem. Get the technology guys into a room and let them figure it out, and we come back and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And the problem with that is that's not necessarily the best way of actually handling the process. The other problem with that is the other person it might fall to is the legal compliance folk, right? Hey, we'll just give it to the lawyers and they can figure it out. Well, the lawyers are behind too on the power curve. And for all of us here, we are actually managing different parts of the same elephant, right? Because if we're looking at it from a legal perspective, or I'm looking from a technology perspective, if I'm using this to actually drive outcomes, do we care if it's equitable or not? No, that's not the perspective we're looking at. Having the right person out there in those groups can actually manage it. Is it going to what's the impact on the process? Do we have how is this going to impact the process? Bringing in the right stakeholders and process stakeholders and getting those involved as well is a more universal set of applicants that we've seen to actually drive it in. Now, which comes down to the next part of this, which is this project. The danger of handing it over to us IT folk is sometimes we approach, our strategy is similar to that of Oprah Winfrey giving out cars. We walk out and we're like, hey, you get AI, and you get AI, and you get AI, right? Not every process needs AI in the organization, right? We have to be very selective of which processes we're actually going to leverage on. And so some of the criteria that I would recommend and some of the things that we can explore out there is, number one, I would say this: what is the problem we're trying to solve? If we know what problem we're trying to solve, AI is just a tool and a solution to a problem. So understanding what problem you're trying to solve is very first paramount, because it may not need artificial intelligence to solve it. Second, if you are going to use AI, are you using a project that actually has the data to support it? Do you have the infrastructure to support it? Again, we're giving it data. Has someone actually scrubbed the data? Who's scrubbing the data? What are we looking for in the data? The third part of that, I would say, is looking at that tool from the perspective of what's the ROI in this, right? What's the value add? What are the benefits we're trying to achieve? And what are the costs? the costs are very tangible. So the other question to that is, what does success look like? What does the value add look like? Can we measure that as well to get a more sustainable ROI for our delivery and for our benefits? And then finally, the last thing out there is there's some really good trainings. I got some links to those. GSA has some trainings that they offer. So if you have a .gov or .mil email address, they offer free trainings. There's another group out there called Innovate Us. They also do .gov. If you have a .gov email domain, they'll usually offer some free trainings on artificial intelligence and actually how you can incorporate it into your organization. Highly recommended. It was very, very helpful as we started looking at tools. So one of the things we were testing here as a proof of concept was this little tool called Health IT Connect. We were just testing it. It's ChatGPT. We were looking at it just to see if it could actually, as a proof of concept tool, how can we leverage ChatGPT? Now, ChatGPT, number one, it's a general purpose tool. Number two, it's a black box. That's why folks are like, oh my God, don't use it. It's a problem tool, but ChatGPT can be tailored, as you'll see, to actually fit your data. So you can fine tune it and do it as a specific tool and leverage it to do so. And one of my programmers, who is our data whiz, actually came up with how to show us how to do that. So one of the things we did with it, because we have a lot of new staff coming on board in our call center, was how can we leverage the tool and maybe see what they can do when they're troubleshooting somebody online. Can they just go to the tool? What can we do to actually make it work? So everything is in a one-stop shop. And if they don't have the more experienced person is out in the field, what can we do to actually help accommodate the customers and what they are? So what we did is we built up knowledge-based articles, and these are, you can see what we did is we did knowledge-based article, and what ChatGPT did, using that tool, is we were able to actually consolidate those things into a smaller, more sustainable summary of our tool sets. We then, and this is another part of the tool, is again, this is the actual ChatGPT function. We knew you guys were coming here to the county of Monterey, so you guys still have like, a few hours left. Here's some stuff that you might want to look at, courtesy of ChatGPT. And finally, this is a non-AI functionality. This is, again, we were able to build some of the old, like we talked about, the explicit programming. So this is those that we actually explicitly program. And actually, these tie into some of our other databases right there. From our ticketing system, our other system for employees, and our Active Directory in Microsoft Azure. And finally, yes, I'm sad to say we do have our dad joke database, courtesy of my team, which also leverages also comes in there. So that unfortunately is not ChatGPT. I wish I could say that, but that's out the door. So here are some of the takeaways we had from our experience of trying to go through this process of trying to leverage some of the AI. First and foremost, having those policies, holding those procedures, holding those things in place is necessary. Making sure that process is in place is definitely going to be critical to hold folks accountable at the very minimal, to delegate the responsibilities, and also to help at least document how we're going to do the process. And then, of course, doing our homework. Making sure we understand that we have the infrastructure in place, making sure we're understanding what are we trying to solve with the tools that we're using, and how are we going to leverage those. And then finally, again, putting the right people in the room. I think one of the mistakes early on was we just made it a technology thing, and it evolved into the compliance loop. Once we started bringing in a lot more set of diverse perspectives, it was better able to address the risks that I think I saw in the process that we had in implementing the tools. And then you don't have to start from scratch. So for those of us in here who are in that first group that said, I haven't really done much with AI, you don't have to start reinventing the wheel. The good news is that everybody here, it's a great collaborative experience. I know some of those tools may already exist. And again, these are some of the tools that we had available. Again, from the NIST, the tools out from GovAI Coalition, and some of the trainings that we cited. Here's my contact information, where you can, I'm sure Rick will certainly hand that out if needed. And with that, That is basically the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. That was actually really awesome. I am one of those people who absolutely despises the idea of using AI. It scares the hell out of me. I know there's a few of us in here, and everybody's got somewhere of that. My first concern is the question, or the point that you brought up, is that sometimes you get bogus or erroneous results from your queries, your data sets, and things like that. In true computer fashion, garbage in, garbage out, right? How can we be sure when we're using this tool that we're going to get an answer that's going to be useful to us, that's going to be able to be relied upon as accurate, and not send us down a rabbit hole that is in a dangerous direction?
That's a good question. The part of it is, I think, as we start engaging the I think we can explore that as we're working with the vendor, looking at saying what's the case. One is if we're doing an implementation, one is checking those implementations, maybe see what are some of the concerns that have been out there. You feel set. Hopefully, we can address a lot of those concerns. Hopefully, during the purchasing process, seeing maybe as we levels, going out in the field setting, that might be a good way of starting that. That's where I would hope to catch it first, right? Is hey, is this data coming in? So that would, I guess, say the first step is doing a prevention, engaging the vendor during the sheet. Hopefully it's one of those vendors that are signed, that we have data on in the vendor registry, because some of those same hallucination questions that you just asked are actually part of the assessment. So that could better help us understand what's their rate of actually having failure. The second part of that I would also say is part of that is also how are they leveraging their models, right? How are they actually calculating that and having a little bit more involvement. Hopefully there's a little bit more intervention and doing a little bit more QA of having those QA processes in place that could also respond again in the organization, taking those in to say how are we leveraging it. And then the third thing is how are we going to leverage the outcomes. Obviously, I think if we're going to do something that's more public facing, is then making sure that we're getting software that actually humans have a little bit more say in the loop in terms of what is actually being implemented, so that we can actually ensure probably a little bit more control of the data.
I have two questions. One early one, or an easy one, I think, which is, did you say the Microsoft Copilot is coming out soon?
So in the private sector, it's already out. For the government cloud, they're saying it's going to come out October 15th is what they're actually saying.
And the reason this was on my radar at all is that a couple of us in CCDEH had asked the question of our IT early on, early on in my 9 months there, could we use it? Why can't we use it? Right now it's fully blocked from many of our computers, ChatGPT. And the answer we got was, Microsoft Copilot will soon be available to you for doing things like, making things plain language and simplifying things, which, especially for, I think, all of us in this room, that's going to be a really valuable tool. I'll just speak for myself, tend to be quite wordy, and I think everybody cares about all the little tiny details that are important to whatever I'm trying to get across. And I think that these tools really can be useful for that. The concern that our IT explained to us is that we basically be feeding these black boxes information that, may be in a draft stage, it may not be fully accurate, or it may be protected and we're just naive. And so somebody who is like a savvy player could figure out how to pull that out and use it against us. So I am just curious what your take on any of that is, and if there's a future beyond just using it as like a grammar and punctuation to it.
Thank you. Yeah, there's actually a couple of things that we found out as we were exploring Copilot. Number one is, so Copilot is actually going to explore, so there's some things. I think one is organizations should get ready for Copilot. And what I mean by that is, in terms of preparation, is number one is making sure that Copilot is going to be given data that we have access to. So what I mean is, for example, if we have files that we've shared, I've shared to the whole organization that's in my, in my OneDrive or on SharePoint. Now, Copilot will give it to anybody who has access in my organization to Copilot. So I guess the first two things for that is, I think, doing our due diligence of going through personally and making sure things are the right permissions. And that's been the kind of feature in our IT department right now is, okay, is all the security sets up site before we start releasing this to the broader audience, right? Making sure from a security perspective that the data is restricted to whom it needs to be. I think in terms of the language models, I think that is still up in the air of how is the data going to be used, and is our data going to be leveraged as part of training the tool? Right? Because we talked about how those implicit commands are based on existing data. There's our data being used into the tool. I don't think it is. I'll have to look at it. I don't confirm that. I'm not going to walk and say, the guy from Monterey said. But I'll confirm that. I'll certainly find out an answer and get it to Rick, and Rick can disseminate it out to everybody on that. But that is definitely a concern I think we have, is how is that data going to be used once it goes into the language models before we put Copilot to work. So.
Thanks, Rich. Really great presentation. There's so much to learn for all of us. So I just wanted to give 2 more cents, if you don't mind. With respect to my friend and colleague, Craig, this is big. We thought like XML was big when SIR started coming through. This is big. And if we're not figuring out how to work it into our health departments, we are missing out. We're missing out on productivity, we're missing out on effectiveness, you're missing out on recruiting, because this is being taken and run with in the private sector in a gigantic way. And I'd hate to see government lag behind. There's so much opportunity here, just a ton. And the use cases are so more than we could fill a whole conference, a whole week of conferences, the use cases, and they're just gonna get better and better and better and more sophisticated all the time. To the young lady who made the point about the CCDEH not having access, because that's absolutely right. But by the same token, you wouldn't put HIPAA information into an email and send it around, right? Because you have a policy about that. And so this is in that same vein. We want to keep it in our house, on our machine, the things that are private, but things like, hey, here's an enforcement letter, and I want to make sure I've covered all my bases, or is it worded correctly, or can you make it to be more educational, less enforcement oriented? That kind of stuff isn't private and is a great use case, and there are plenty others. But thank you again, Rich. That was awesome.
Thank you. So I do a lot of translations for our agency, so it's not for environmental health only, but for planning, building, and safety. So it's written documents, and it used to take me hours to do a press release, or translate, or write a document. Now with AI, I can go into Google Translate, and it kind of takes care of it. You still need somebody that knows the subject to go in and modify it if needed, but now it's a quick turnaround, so it's definitely very helpful.
I'll just say real quick, I just recently used it to create a PowerPoint presentation. I had an existing document, and I told it to go out, make the PowerPoint based on the document, and it made 10 slides of the presentation for me. And yeah, I had to go back and check it. Some of the stuff it didn't get right, or I wouldn't say it that way. But in terms of productivity, it saved me time not to have to sit there and think about every single slide, each part of it. So yeah, I think there's kind of small scale productivity all the way up to helping us deal with some of these large databases we have and pulling information out of them.
Right, well, on behalf of the IT committee, I'd like to thank you, Rich.